Salve RWBY, everyone. I'm Much More.
And I'm Sklar.
And we're doing kind of a different thing for us.
It's called a podcast.
Kind of. It's kind of review, kind of podcast, mostly just discussion of a show. Yeah. And today we are doing the first volume of RWBY. And we plan on doing the second and third volumes after this. Not today after this, but...
You don't have to be specific like that.
Yeah, I know.
They don't need to know our exact schedule. I doubt many people care. By the time someone watches this, the other will probably already be out.
Yeah. Anyhow, basically, the way this is going to work is we watched Volume 1 before we started recording this, and we're just going to talk about it, and we're going to try to keep it focused just on Volume 1. They're warning ahead of time, there will be spoilers if you haven't watched the first volume of...
Really?
I know, it's amazing.
Yes.
I know. But if you haven't watched, at the very least, the first volume of RWBY, then do yourself a favor. Go watch it. You can watch it for free on roosterteeth.com.
Well, this has just become an advertisement, hasn't it?
Hey, yeah. Anything related to Rooster Teeth for Achievement Hunter basically does with me. But anyhow.
Much More here is an actual... What is it? Sponsor?
Yeah, on the Rooster Teeth website.
Yeah. And so he loves their crap.
Yeah, or you could also watch on YouTube. Either way, just heads up about spoilers. We'll try not to spoil anything from Volume 2, and I certainly won't try to spoil anything from Volume 3 because Sklar is a bitch and still hasn't watched it. But just giving a heads up on that, and I figure we'll just go until we get tired talking about it, or for however long. We'll just see. This is partly a test of this and seeing how we do with this.
Alright, let's see how this 6-minute video goes.
Yeah, this entire video is just going to be me introducing it and saying, hey, we might spoil stuff.
Yeah.
Honestly, I guess the best place to start is I love RWBY. It's an awesome show. It's anime style.
Yeah.
We are going to be just kind of not sure what to say. I guess we'll just...
Okay, well, yeah, I do like it in general because it has like a very anime style, which I've always been a huge freaking fan of anime. Anyone who likes anime is probably going to like this. And it does capture a lot of anime aspects really well, but it doesn't like capture the bad aspects as well.
Yeah, and it doesn't fall into the tropes that a lot of anime does, which is basically a brief fight scene followed by a lot of fan service that a lot of anime lately in particular does.
Yeah, a lot of the newer anime shows that come out are just like fan service all over the damn place. It's honestly like it's a bit ridiculous getting to the point where it feels like you're watching the same show over and over again.
Yeah, and like with RWBY, they made it a point that they're not going to have like a lot of fan service type stuff and all. Like obviously you do have some of the outfits or stuff that people enjoy looking at and all.
Some of the girls are busty.
Yes, indeed. But they've also made a point, like, there's not going to be any upskirt shots or anything like that. Like, I think they even joked when they were first coming out of RWBY that they were implementing the most efficient anti-upskirt technology or something like that.
Yeah. But yeah, so I do appreciate that. Like, it's refreshing, I guess.
Yeah.
To just have something like, it's trying to entertain you, like, with itself. It's
Instead
not like
of,
any, like bullshit thrown at you. It's
appealing to you rather than your penis.
That's one way to put it, yeah.
I mean, that's the gist of it. And it's really nice to have a show that's focused more on its story and characters than just, like, that.
Yeah. I do like a lot of the focus on characters. Some I wish got more focus than others, or some not focus at all.
Yeah,
but
we might as well start out with my biggest pet peeve of the series, which we discussed it while we were watching it. Team Cardinal. I hate Team Cardinal. I hate the generic bullies.
Yeah, we start with what we dislike because that's just what stands out the most.
Yeah, it really is.
Bad things stand out most than good things. It's weird like that, but that's how it always is.
And Team Cardinal, I really, really want them to develop those characters more in the future. I don't hate the idea of having bully type characters. I just hate it being just the generic bullies. Give them some sort of character development, please.
Yeah, the Team Cardinal characters, which is what's the name of the main guy?
Cardin Winchester.
Yeah, it's just him and then three, which he is already pretty much a generic bully, and then three other generic bullies.
Yeah,
that's their team. They're the most generic characters in the entire show. Everyone else is considerably more interesting.
Yeah, like even side characters that get maybe one line.
Yeah, even characters that have less screen time are more interesting.
Yeah, which is really sad because, like I said, I'm fine with having the bullies there, especially for like character development and stuff like that. Like trying to show that John is unable to stand up for himself, and then he gets the courage because he gets fed up with the idea of picking on his team and all like that.
Yeah, I do think like John, like having the character development to like grow balls was like that needed to happen, and like I'm glad that that happened. It showed that. It's just the opposite end of it. Like the bully should have had something,
some personality besides, oh, I'm the bully, I'm an asshole, and that's all their screen time was I'm a bully, I'm an asshole. Hey, faunists are nothing but animals. Hey, John's a loser, let's pick on him.
Yeah.
That's all that Cardin's team amounts to.
Yeah, which they wasted a good amount of screen time on that. I was like, 20-ish minutes.
I think
like the whole thing,
20 or 30 minutes out of the show, and I think the first volume is only like 2 hours long or so. I think it's the shortest of the 3 volumes so far.
Yeah, it's a good chunk of it that's taken up with that.
Yeah, and honestly, that makes that whole like John subplot kind of my least favorite part of the show at all, just because, like I said, I don't mind the subplot. I like the subplot. It helps develop John's character, but it's just those characters, like Cardin's team, I wish they would do something more with them in the future, because that is like the most generic characters ever. Which is saying something, because then you have, like, even working counter to them, you have John, who's pretty interesting and pretty funny at times. Just because he can be... I think the way they described it is he's meant to be the everyman of the series to ask the questions the audience would ask. Like when he asked Pierre about Aura and all, like in the forest. And stuff like that. He's meant to be the one who prompts the exposition to explain stuff about the universe that every other character should realistically know, so there wouldn't be a reason to explain otherwise.
Yeah. Which is, honestly, it's good that they have a character like that, because it's... You don't want to go into something and it's like nothing is explained. It's just you have to accept what's thrown at you.
Yeah. And RWBY's good about that. They do explain things in a way that doesn't feel like they're just explaining it to the audience.
Yeah.
I mean, and they also do good with explaining stuff outside of the show and all, which does help, but it's not necessary for the show itself, which I enjoy. I'm big on...
What do you mean explaining stuff outside of the show?
Just like they do have the World of Remnant stuff. I can't remember if they did any of those for Volume 1 or not. But basically just segments that explain backstory outside the show.
Oh, so it's like a side thing?
Kinda.
They did?
Kinda. They do have side things.
Explains why I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. See, I'm big on watching pretty much everything that comes out of Rooster Teeth, Wallace, Sklar.
I just sort of watch whatever.
Yeah. But that, and then like they'll discuss on podcasts like stuff, just minor things about the world. Like, I don't really know of any good examples off the top of my head.
Good job. Yeah, see, we have the super fan here that can't think of anything, and then we have the average just watch whatever guy.
Yeah. Honestly, now that I think about it, it is more of like... I don't... Now that I think about it, I can't think about it.
I clearly should not have asked what you meant by other world building. Apparently there's some world remnant thing that explains a bit more. That's basically it.
Hey, that's the gist of it.
There you go. So it's cool that you have that if you want to look into that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I have it, and I haven't felt lost for anything.
Yeah,
It's not necessary, it's just if you like that kind of thing.
It's just added information, added backstory to the world, rather than something you have to know in order to enjoy the show. And that's another thing that I really like about Rooster Teeth content. it has a lot. It's all built to where you can enjoy it if you didn't know anything about Rooster Teeth or anything like that. But then it also has a whole lot of inside jokes that long-term fans will really enjoy.
Yeah.
And RWBY is a good example of this because I was, like, while we were watching, I was pointing out all kinds of stuff to Sklar. Like, this voice actor is this member from Achievement Hunter, or, like, these two characters are based on this RT short or something like that.
It's kind of nice to see, but it's not like I watched it on my own before knowing any of that, and I was like, still enjoyed it just about the same.
Yeah. So. Like, it doesn't greatly enhance the experience to know stuff like that, but it does make it feel a little bit more fun for long-term fans like myself.
Now, we should probably go back to say more about the beginning, because that what we just talked about with
like the third act.
It's like, like, it's the third act out of like the 4-act volume.
Yeah. Which, I mean, technically speaking, that would be the second act if you're going by traditional.
Shut up. No one cares.
But I care.
Let's see. Yeah, so they started off with Roman.
Yeah.
Which is your second favorite, whatever.
Second favorite character in the entire series, Roman Torchwick.
Yeah. Which is honestly a pretty good, like, villain to start you off with. Like, you see him and he is already just pretty interesting.
Yeah, like, the moment Roman shows up on screen, you know he's a character that you want to see do something. Like, he doesn't just seem like a generic guy whenever he shows up on screen.
Yeah.
Like, I guess he makes an entrance, is what we're saying.
Yeah.
And then...
like, his voice actor is very good. Like, his delivery is just, like, freaking spot on.
Yeah, it's Gray Haddock. I believe he's one of the producers for RWBY. I don't know... I can't remember cast members' exact roles in terms of, like, what they're officially doing as part of the show. But, and he was also a voice actor before he joined Rooster Teeth. So, he has full voice acting experience prior. And that's something just that I like about the show in general, is that they don't go necessarily for a whole lot of big name voice actors or actresses or stuff like that. They do tend to pull from their existing talent for characters. Like, RWBY is voiced by Lindsay Tuggy, or Lindsay Jones now, sorry, she was Tuggy at the time RWBY came out.
Just gonna go get a sandwich while you're doing this?
Yeah, I could probably list off like half the cast and what they do, but long story short, most of the voice cast for RWBY, like, they do have some full voice actors and then some people who have since become full voice actors, but they're also a lot of talent pulled from, like, other stuff at Rooster Teeth, like Achievement Hunter or people who worked on Red vs. Blue or stuff like that.
Yeah. I think now, currently, like the third volume or whatever, they got, like, Vic Mignogna.
Yeah. They got Vic Mignogna to play a character.
Yeah. And I'm assuming they probably got some other guys.
Yeah, I can't remember. I
would probably recognize them.
Yeah, there was another one that was, like, a big name actor. But we're not talking about Volume 3. We're talking about Volume 1.
Yeah.
And back to the beginning and all, like, I think the entrance scene with the dust shop and the way they introduced RWBY for people who hadn't, like, watched the trailers and all, that was a good way to introduce the character.
Yeah.
And even for people who did watch the trailers.
Yeah, because when you watch the trailer, you didn't actually get a lot of... I don't think she actually spoke, did she?
No, she didn't. That was...
And then in this, you can tell, like, you can pretty much get her attitude, like, out of, like, the first scene with her talking.
Yeah.
And there you go.
First couple of lines she did.
Yeah.
I think the trailer, the way they described it, was that it was more of a showcase for the weapon and the fighting style than anything else, more than the characters. And then the show, like, especially considering she was the most prominent character from the trailer because she was the first trailer that came out, was the red trailer. The show did a good job of introducing her, because even those of us who watched the trailer, we didn't really know anything about her, and then, like Sklar said, the first couple of lines, you get a good feel of what her character is like.
Yeah. And another thing you can tell pretty much, like, right away is the music implementation is, like, done really well.
Yes, RWBY's...
Like, it all has very good music that, like, stands out. Like, I'm not sure how often they use character songs in it, but like everyone has like their own theme and all.
Yeah, most characters have their own character song of some sort. I think most of the time those will show up just very briefly in the series, but if you especially listen to the soundtrack, like after, because they always release a full soundtrack, you get a good idea of what the characters are like just from their character songs, which is a good thing. There's very few shows that I've watched that I really notice the music while I'm watching the show, but RWBY is one of those, like, it sticks out whenever a song kicks in because it perfectly fits the scene.
Yeah, I always enjoy a background music with vocals in it too.
Yeah, and they do that.
That makes it stand out, and like when the vocals kick in, that's when you know like it's a really awesome thing going on.
Yeah, and they do that a good bit in RWBY, especially like they like to do that right as the big fight's about to happen or stuff, or like a bit later on when Team RWBY and Team Juniper are first getting together and they're fighting the Nevermore and the... I'm trying to think what the giant scorpion's name is.
Yeah, you know what? Don't give the actual name. Describe what the monster is, because no one else is going to know what you're talking about.
The giant scorpion and the giant bird,
there
basically.
You go.
But they have the music. The song is Red Like Roses Part 2, which is a continuation of RWBY's character song from her trailer.
Is that one called Red Like Roses Part 1?
No, it's just called Red Like Roses.
Fuck you!
But anyhow, the song is Red Like Roses Part 2, and it has just the music from it playing while Jean's team is fighting the giant scorpion. And then as soon as it goes to go back to RWBY's team, the lyrics kick in. And that's when they're like about to do the big finishing combo to take down the Nevermore, which is the giant bird.
Yeah, and the fight scenes in general, but like particularly the big fight scenes that this one in particular was about in the middle of Volume 1. But the big fight scenes especially, like always like there's a ton of action going on, and it's very fast paced, but it's not too fast. Yeah, like, you can follow what's going on.
Yeah, it's never to the point where it's might as well be a blur. Like, you can see every movement, and there's a lot of, like, hidden things you won't notice at first. Like, Pyrrha actually shows off her semblance slightly during that big fight scene at one point. And you don't... Only if you're basically... It's a freeze-frame bonus.
Semblance is, like, their ability, their power.
Yeah, like, each character has a single superpower, essentially, that's called a semblance. Which RWBY's is... she's able to move incredibly fast. Weiss is her ability to use and control the glyphs, which is her magical powers. Yang's is that she absorbs damage. Like, the more damage she takes, the angrier she gets, and the more powerful she becomes. And then Blake's is her ability to create, basically, clones of herself to take hits for her, so she can escape or dodge.
This has just become so informative.
Yes, indeed.
What were you going on about Pyrrha showing off?
There is, like, Pyrrha's semblance is magnetism, or polarity as they officially name it. And no, it is not the ability to control pulls. That was a dumb joke from the show, and I felt some reason to include it.
I know. I was about to say it, but then you cut me off with that, and you made it worse. Good job.
That's what I'm good for, is ruining jokes. But basically, she uses weapons that are made out of metal, so she can control those with her semblance. And at one point during the fight scene, she uses her semblance to bring her shield back to her. And you don't really notice it. You think maybe just the shield bounced back, but...
It's like boomerangs the shield?
Yeah, from what I've heard and read online, I haven't actually looked for the exact frame of it, but apparently there's a frame or two where you can see the glow around her shield indicating that she was using her semblance to return it to her.
Yeah. And I do like little stuff like that. Like little things you can like go back and see again and be like, oh, I missed that. It's like that's always like nice to just find out.
Yeah, and there was a lot of that. Like even during when we were watching it, I've watched the first volume probably 6 or 7 times now, and I was still noticing things that I'd never seen before whenever I was rewatching it.
To be fair, some of them were mistakes.
Yeah, just I will say if you've only seen volume 1, the animation quality is outstanding to begin with, first of all. Especially considering that this was the first fully animated thing Rooster Teeth had ever produced. But it improves a whole lot as the series goes on. Just like going from Volume 1 to Volume 2, you can tell, like, first of all, they add character models for all the background characters instead of the silhouettes they used in Volume 1.
Yeah, normally I'll say normally, specifically just in Volume 1, for, like, background side characters that don't matter, don't even speak, they don't have an actual appearance, they're just, like, a completely solid black silhouette, and it's very jarring to see.
Yeah, especially if you go back from later volumes.
Yeah, but that gets fixed in Volume 2, and the animation quality improves very significantly to Volume 1 to Volume 2.
Yeah, so if you do notice anything about the animation you don't really care for in Volume 1, rest assured it more than likely got fixed on the transition from Volume 1 to Volume 2.
Yeah.
Like, when they were first making RWBY, they didn't know how well it would go over. They were worried people would hate it. Even, like, the first trailer for RWBY came out at the end of Red vs. Blue. I think it was Volume 10. Yeah, it was Volume 10 because people were worried Red vs. Blue was ending to make way for RWBY. And they were worried that people wouldn't take it well. Like, and they were extremely surprised by how much the fans were excited for RWBY after that trailer, which I don't know why they were so surprised because it's really kick-ass. But
well, like, even if it's something you personally make or whatever, and you think it's really kick-ass, it's like,
yeah,
you don't exactly expect everyone's going to think this is kick-ass.
Yeah, but either way, they were really cautious about it, and they were rushing to get it done and stuff like that. So that's why they kind of cut corners on the animation in order to be able to finish it and get it out in time. Because they were also doing a thing where they were still working on it as episodes were coming out. Like, they were finishing up work on it. I think the way they do stuff typically is they record the voice lines and all that first, and then they start the animation and stuff like that. And I know Volume 1 in particular is a good example to show that they are working on it while it's coming out. Because Roman, who showed up at the very beginning of the first episode, was only intended to be in that first episode. He wasn't intended to be a full character in the series. He was just meant to be a one-off villain. But people liked him so much that they decided to bring him back in the series. And he got a couple of scenes near the middle, and then at the end of the series, end of the season, he came back as the main villain at the end.
Yeah, he gets a pretty cool fight scene, like, at the very end.
Yeah.
He's sort of the final boss, I guess you could say.
Yeah, of Volume 1, and they don't beat him. He just leaves whenever too many reinforcements show up.
Whenever he's up against too many foes, and he's like, no, out of here.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I can handle the monkey guy with the nunchuck shotguns, and the cat girl that can create clones of herself and is using a whip dual sword pistol, but the android girl with the swords flying out of her back and pulling down airships, that's a little bit too much.
Man, explaining that, this sounds ridiculous.
It really does. But that's the kind of show RWBY is. Like, it's a world built where all this stuff sounds incredibly insane, but it perfectly makes sense within the world.
Yeah. The most over-the-top thing about it are definitely the weapons themselves.
Yes, the weapons are the real stars of the show, by far. Like, the characters are there to look cool and all, and have character development. It's the weapons we come to see.
The weapons are, like, admittedly very interesting. Some of them, like, really stand out as, like, very unique. Like, you wouldn't see a lot of stuff like this elsewhere.
Yeah. RWBY Scythe is a good example since it was also the first one introduced. It's a scythe and a sniper rifle. And she fully uses it in every regard. Because what she'll do, the weapons in the show are designed, like the guns, are designed so that the characters use the momentum created from the firing of them to actually aid their movement. And RWBY does that quite often, using her high-powered sniper rifle rounds to help propel her and help her move faster and dodge attacks and stuff like that.
Yeah. Most other people honestly use that too. Like, that's a tactic you see just like all around throughout the series.
Yeah, like Yang will actually use her shotgun gauntlets to help her basically fly or sustain flight for a bit at times.
I think she does that to jump across trees.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah.
And then, like, during an early scene, they're basically getting flung through the air, and they have to employ a landing strategy to land safely. And like, Yang is using her shotgun gauntlets to... She puts on a pair of aviators, first of all, which is awesome. And then she's using her shotgun gauntlets to fly through the air and just keep going. And you can tell she's having a lot of fun with it. And then, like, Ruby uses her scythe shooting towards the ground to help her slow down, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, something like that. That is something I also really like. Like, in that specific situation, basically, like, all the characters are launched into the air, and they have to figure out some way to land. And they all have, like, their own specific, unique ways of landing.
Yeah, no...
Excluding John, who just sort of flails about and someone saves him.
Yeah, because John, one of the plot points, obviously, is he snuck his way into school. He's never been to a combat school before. He has no clue what he's doing. And yet here he is suddenly in this, like, what's basically a college in the world of RWBY.
Yeah.
For huntsmen and huntresses.
Yeah, John basically gets carried for a good portion of Volume 1 in particular.
Yeah, and, like, one of the better scenes early on is him asking about the landing strategy. Like, landing strategy, like, you mean you're dropping us off somewhere? And then Professor Hopkins like, no, you'll be falling.
You will be falling.
It's like, and that whole exchange between the two of them is really good.
That's also something that stands out. Like, the dialogue is it feels very unique, honestly. Like, especially if you try to compare it to animes. It's very, like, a lot of, like, phrases and such you can hear in just about every anime. But with RWBY, like, they have a lot of their own personal, like, swing to things. Their own personal way of talking and little quirks that are just, like,
you
refreshing.
Don't hear in other stuff.
Yeah, it's like a more natural conversation rather than reading a script per se. Yeah.
It does feel more like people talking to one another, like how they would in that situation.
And on that note, that's probably why a lot of the voice acting is, despite the voice actors and voice actresses not being, or most of them not all being, like, professionals, it still sounds like very, like, it doesn't sound forced or fake or anything, like, for most of them.
Yeah, like, there's a couple, like, I think
the main cast sounds, like, very good.
Yes, the main cast in particular is great, but there is a couple, like, Skylark, which is Cardin's one teammate, who has a couple of lines. He sounds like he could have recorded the lines again a little bit better, but everyone else...
It's mostly like the throwaway characters.
Yeah, and even most of the throwaway characters do good with their lines. There's just a couple that are which was a major concern before the series came out, especially after the Black trailer, where they first introduced dialogue. It was the third trailer to come out, and it was the first one they had any dialogue in, and it was alright. It wasn't, like, good dialogue, but it was... I think it was mostly just because we had 2 trailers prior with no dialogue. So, it just... That was a concern, and then also people were concerned about RWBY's voice actress at first. Because at the end of the Yellow trailer, she had a line, and it wasn't bad, especially now that we know more of what style she's going for with the voice. But it also was kind of jarring because people had kind of gotten in their heads what the character would sound like beforehand.
Yeah, especially when, like, you have a trailer that's, like, completely silent and just shows a lot of ass kicking. Then you have no idea that, like, the character doing said ass kicking is actually, like, very ditzy and, like, funny.
Yeah, especially, and has, like, a really, like, high-pitched voice. I mean, she's meant to be a 16-year-old girl, but her voice is a bit higher pitched than most.
And on that note, the comedy is actually pretty good in this.
Yeah, there are a few jokes that fall flat, but there's also, for every joke that falls flat, there's about 20 that go over really well.
Yeah. Like, I had a lot, there's a lot, and I enjoyed this.
Yeah.
And I'm not even, like, a super fan like this freak is.
I would take offense to that, but it's true.
Don't even bother you that I called you a freak, no.
Yeah, that's
true as well.
That's what I was talking about. There's just a whole lot of good stuff with all the characters and all. Especially, Professor Port is still one of my favorite. He's voiced by...
Yeah, which one is the professor again?
Voiced by Ryan from Achievement Hunter.
I mean, like... Oh, it's the mustache guy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he's...
I think physical appearance is going to apply better, too.
Yeah, I
know,
names.
you know everything.
They have names. I want to call them by it.
Yeah, do that. Just also explain who it actually is.
Well, Professor Peter Port is the fat guy with the mustache and the blunderbuss axe.
He doesn't actually use, it's just sort of there. Very easy to miss, honestly.
He uses it to open the cage.
He could use anything for that. Could have used a freaking key.
Yeah, but what would be the fun of that when you have a blunderbuss axe? By the way, like, Ryan is my favorite member of the Achievement Hunter cast.
Oh, here we go.
And I will admit that I'm a bit biased towards liking his character because of that. But he's also... Honestly, he's probably one of the funniest characters on screen at any point in the first volume, in my opinion.
Of course. Of course.
And don't pretend.
No, his scenes were pretty funny. Like, yeah.
Especially...
I wouldn't, like, splitting my side, rolling over laughing, but yeah. It was good.
You don't do that anyhow.
Sometimes, man. It's rare, but
I've
been known to do it.
I've never seen or heard you laugh that way. But alright. Actually, probably during some of our Dark Souls videos. But, either way, and then Dr. RWBY, which is the super high speed, like, darting all over the place. He's
the caffeine doctor, basically.
Yeah, basically. He's also really good, and that's Joel Heyman, who is also the voice of Caboose.
Although he's a teacher, actually, not a doctor. He just insists on being called a doctor.
Well, he's a doctor. You can have a doctor. Doctorates don't mean you work in the medical industry, Sklar.
Oh, it doesn't?
No, it doesn't.
I don't freaking know. I didn't get no doctorate.
There you go, audience. Sklar has officially proved he's an idiot. But, just all the characters introduced are pretty good. The only character I don't really care for, honestly, is... other than Cardin's team, obviously, is Glinda Goodwitch, who is, well, she's the witch girl, woman.
Yeah, like the second female you see.
Yeah. Like, she shows up at the beginning to save Ruby, and then she is in the next scene, basically, and she's showing that she's kind of strict, but can also be kind of friendly.
I think she gets a bit more characterization later on in, like, volume 2.
Yeah, she does. Yeah. But... especially in Volume 1, she's just kind of... she's meant to be the strict teacher who doesn't really... she does things by the book, kind of, it feels like, and...
no nonsense.
Yeah,
basically.
Which is alright, but she's also one of my least favorite characters.
Yeah. I guess it is sort of bland to just see, but I can understand the character itself.
Yeah, I can, especially compared to, like, the other teachers she's good to have around.
Yeah, because if you had an entire school that was just, like...
completely insane.
Yeah. Which, I mean, like, it's not quite Hogwarts level of insanity, but...
well, the teachers are a bit more than Hogwarts level, but... Sklar did make that comparison before while we were watching it. It is kind of like a Hogwarts type situation. Like,
yeah, it's like a school for superheroes.
Basically, and it's a good premise, no matter how many different ways it's been done in shows and stuff.
Yeah. It's not as stupid as Sky High.
No, nothing's as stupid. It all works really well.
I actually kind of like Sky High. I'm just pointing that out there because you said nothing else is whatever, but
I didn't care for it. But,
I'm not gonna defend it, but I was like, that was okay.
Honestly, let's not turn this into a discussion of that instead. That would be bad.
Yeah.
Well, we went to watch this video on RWBY where these two guys were talking about it. Then they spent the next hour talking about Sky High instead. I don't know where that came from. It just kind of did, but... going back to the action scenes in RWBY are really the main reason to watch it, especially the first volume.
Yeah.
Like, the action was primarily done, like, directed and all by Monty Ohm, rest in peace, because he was an awesome guy, did a lot of really cool stuff. He's just really awesome guy, very talented. And And, like, it really shows it's his style of action sequences and all.
Yeah. I believe what he did before this was a Dead Fantasy.
Yeah, well, and then also working on Red vs. Blue's action
Well, I mean,
scenes.
yeah, I know all that, but...
Yes.
That's... Dead Fantasy stands out as, like, what's most, like...
well known.
to me, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just because, like, sort of has the whole anime...
Feel to
it, yeah.
Yeah, I would say Dead Fantasy is more like RWBY's fighting style than Red vs. Blue's, because Red vs. Blue, like the action sequences where they're actually fighting, has more of a heavy feel, which makes sense because they're in giant power armor suits.
I think that also has a bit more comedy thrown into it too.
Yeah. RWBY's, like, there are funny moments in the action sequences from time to time, but it's also more about this looks cool and it sounds cool, let's make it happen, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like, there's not a dull moment in action sequences in RWBY, which is hard to say for a lot of shows that have such a heavy focus on action.
The action wants to keep your attention, but it doesn't want to, like, strain yourself trying to
keep up with
everything that's going on.
Yeah. Like Scar said before, there's not a moment where it's going so fast that you can't tell everything that's going on.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of... It is very fast-paced, and there's a lot of stuff going on at once, but it's never to the point where you're wondering, wait, how did that happen, or where did that come from?
Yeah. It sort of feels like in Devil May Cry, like how a lot of their action scenes and the cutscenes are just over the top, has a lot of stuff going on in it. It's sort of like that, but improved upon vastly.
Yeah. And honestly, like, more range of motions and stuff.
Yeah.
And like again, going back to the first big action sequence of the series with the fight between the Scorpion and the Giant Bird and Team Juniper and Team RWBY, that scene just really showcases how they're able to make everything flow. Like, when it starts out, all 8 of the characters are running together over a bridge trying to get away from the 2 Grimm, and it separates them. Like, the Giant Nevermore flies through and destroys the bridge.
Giant Bird. It's a giant bird.
Shut up, Scar. But it flies through and it destroys the bridge, and Scar is leaving the room. I like how he's pretending to have left the room, but he's just standing
Fuck
here.
you! That was gonna be funny.
Yeah, it was funny. Either way, it destroys the bridge, and, like, half of Team Juniper is on one side of the broken bridge, and then, I think it's Ren and Pyrrha are fighting the giant scorpion on the other side, alongside Blake. And Blake gets knocked off, and she uses her pistol whip, Kasarigama thing, to swing around and get back up on the other side. Meanwhile, Jean and Nora, John's like, we have to get over there, and Nora's like, I can do that, and she brings out her hammer and just catapults John to the other side before using her hammer to rocket propel herself to the other side to join the fight. And they do this all smoothly to where it goes from 8 people trying to run away to the teams separated on either side of this broken bridge fighting their own respective monster. Yeah. Which I enjoy that they're able to do that smoothly instead of we have to split up and you take these guys, we take that one sort of thing, like a lot of shows will do.
Yeah. I will say the show is like, I definitely feel it's more like about the fighting and like yeah, I feel like it's more about the fighting, but it does have like depth to it. Like, it's not straight up just like fighting cutscenes.
Yeah. It's a good mix between fighting and like developing the characters and all.
Yeah. You care about the people that are fighting and why they're fighting.
Yeah, it's not like, oh, these are the super strong heroes, they're going to win every fight no matter what sort of thing that a lot of shows do. Or, oh, they're just generic good guys, we're just here to see them beat stuff up.
Yeah.
It's more of, oh, well, this character just got the crap beat out of them, I hope they're alright and can actually win this fight sort of thing, because I don't want them to get killed.
Yeah. Let's see. What else have we not gone over?
Not entirely certain.
Oh, let's see. There's the faunus stuff that happens like towards the later half of it.
Yeah, I'd say that starts about halfway through the series.
Yeah, I particularly didn't really care for that because it was just like it's basically just like the racism subplot.
Yeah, it's another racism subplot, and it does get a little bit too much screen time. Honestly, it's mostly just there to drive character development for Blake, who is a faunist. But it's also
Sun Wukong.
Yeah, but it's not really there as much to drive his character development. He's just there.
I guess Blake is his driving character development.
Yeah. It's alright. I don't dislike the racism plots that much, but it's also just we've seen it done a billion times.
Yeah. I don't know. I sort of find it like boring. Like you see, like Weiss is like very like doesn't like faunus, but like she does have a backstory for like there's a reason to it.
Yeah, it's not like.
But like you still know how that's gonna end up. Like yeah, she's gonna get over it. Yeah, she's still gonna be friends with Blake. So like
yeah,
you can see that coming. And like that I don't like. I don't know. I feel like the racism subplot is just sort of like could have been done
forced,
a bit better or
kinda.
Yeah.
Like racism subplots have just been done so often that there's no need for it. Yes, we get it. Racism is bad. It's always been bad. Blah 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 blah. There's no reason to bring it up in shows all the time. Honestly, like I said, it does tone down as the series goes on for sure. But in Volume 1, especially since it's
basically the last half of that.
Yeah, it's the last half of Volume 1, and it really doesn't do anything but try to drive the character development between Blake and Weiss, really.
Yeah. And I guess it introduces Sun Wukong.
Yeah. Though really...
just because I like saying his name.
Yeah. But really, there's no reason for it to even exist to introduce him, because him being a thief that stowed away on a ship is enough to introduce his character. Because, I mean, that's all that really was about his character. Yeah. And then, like, with the Blake and Weiss stuff, really the fact that Blake was part of the White Fang is enough to drive that without having to be about racism or anything like that. Why couldn't it just be they're terrorists who feel like they've been treated unfairly and they want to take down big business or something like that? Yeah. I guess it just feels like racism is a bit too generic of a reason for stuff in such an amazing world as RWBY.
Yeah, like, it's not quite as bad as like the bullying subplot. No.
Yeah, it's not that bad.
It was still interesting. Like, don't get me wrong. Like,
it's not bad by any means. It's just comparatively speaking, for the universe, it felt kind of generic.
Yeah. And
this is also especially after having seen later volumes where they focus more on RWBY stuff rather than that.
Yeah. Which, honestly, you don't see too much of, like, Grimm's, like, the main, like, enemy types.
Well, okay, I don't mind that at all in RWBY because it's the same way as, like, good zombie movies do, where they don't show the zombies. The zombies are a threat, but they're not the focus. Like Shaun of the Dead, where it's more about the characters and what they're going through rather than the monsters that are threatening them.
It's also a comedy.
RWBY's a comedy. And Shaun of the Dead is also a comedy.
I would consider RWBY a comedy, I guess. I just feel like comedy's sort of like a side thing that's in it.
I mean, it's like most things nowadays. It's a dramatic comedy.
Yeah, I guess.
So...
Like I said, I'll take it.
Like I said, I don't mind that the Grimm aren't like a centerpiece thing. They're a threat and they're problems, but they're not the main focus, and which is a good thing because a lot of shows.
There is something about the Grimms I do like in Volume 2, which maybe won't actually see more of them, but I guess I'll get into that once we actually do Volume 2.
You can go ahead and say it if it relates to Volume 1.
It's basically I just want to see more of the Grimms.
Yeah, and we do get to see more and more of them as time goes on. They introduce more types of Grimm in particular. But I do like that the focus is mostly on the characters and all of that rather than the mindless monsters that are trying to kill them.
Yeah.
which is something that a lot of anime or show fall into, which is they focus too much on fighting the creatures rather than the characters themselves. Like, it's more about the fight against the monsters than it is about...
Yeah. I do feel like RWBY has a very nice balance between the two.
Yeah. Like, it's just...
Not specifically even just fighting the monsters, just fighting in general.
Yeah.
Like, there's a good balance.
It's a very... Honestly, if you think about it, Volume 1 only has, like, three fights in it. The opening with RWBY against Roman and his goons. And then the battle with the Nevermore and the Scorpion. And then at the end again...
Scorpion.
Shut up, Scar. And then at the end with Roman again. Like, those are the only real major fights. There is one fight in there between John and a giant Ursa, which is the bear things.
Yeah, it's part of the bully subplot thing.
So, I guess there's 4 fights throughout Volume 1, which doesn't sound like a whole lot.
But the fights are fairly long.
Yeah, they're fairly long.
And there are a few, like, skirmishes in between, too.
Yeah. And they're well done enough that you don't realize there's so few. Yeah. Also. Like, it's more about... They're, like Scar said, they're balanced really well to where there's a good ratio of fights to character development and storytelling, which is something you don't see very often, really.
Alright, well, I think now we've talked about just about everything.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else we should discuss before we wrap up.
I don't know.
Just in general, I know we've said some stuff that we really disliked and all, but even the stuff we dislike is so much better than a lot of shows we've seen that, like...
Yeah. Basically, RWBY stands out, has things that are interesting. I like it.
Yeah. It's absolutely... If you've listened to this without having seen RWBY, you absolutely should go watch it.
You've also not done what we said. Shame on you.
Yes, indeed. Which I don't really... I'm sure there's other people out there like me that don't really mind the spoilers because it's more about the experience rather than knowing what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So...
if you spoil me, I'm gonna stab you.
Yeah. By the way, it's definitely a show worth watching. We both really enjoy it. And before too long, we'll watch Volume 2 and give you another one of these. Not really sure what we're going to call this show.
The podcasting.
Maybe. Who knows?
I don't know.
We'll figure it out before I upload it.
I was going to call it the podcast, but apparently it's a show.
Oh. Yeah, well, I mean, it's on YouTube. So,
The YouTubeing.
Indeed.
No, fuck that. We're done.
Alright, well, take care, everyone, and we'll see you next time with RWBY Volume 2.
See ya.